Chapter 43:22. Kong Xiao looked at Huan's bleeding arm and said in a low voice, "I'll take you to the hospital." Huan said no. Kong Xiao was very insistent and dragged her over. In the hospital, the doctor bandaged the wound and said it was a good thing it was just a scratch. If it had moved an inch, it could have hurt the aorta, and it wouldn't have been just a small wound. After the doctor finished speaking, Kong Xiao looked at Huan and said in a slightly reproachful tone, "Don't you think you should be more careful in the future? There are stage keepers and art designers at the scene, and you have to do everything yourself every time. Look at this injury, it's not pretty." Huan looked at Kong Xiao. Such a shallow wound won't leave a scar. Kong Xiao took the medicine for her, and they walked out to the car. Huan walked past him, and before Kong Xiao started the car, she said, "Is there something on your mind?" Huan was a little surprised. You can tell. Kong Xiao wanted to rub her hair because Huan's personality was similar to Sumo's. However, he restrained himself and coughed lightly. "It's written on your face. What's wrong with Qin Mo?" Huan smiled weakly. "Kong Xiao, do you know AI Jia?" Kong Xiao nodded. "We worked together once or twice a few years ago. At that time, Ruan Yin was still his agent and had filmed 2 music videos with AI Jia. They wanted to be a couple, but Kong Xiao didn't agree." Huan smiled. Kong Xiao looked at her. "What are you smiling at? I have nothing to do with her. I'm innocent." As he spoke, he took out a cigarette and lit it. He smoked slowly and started the car. As he drove, he held the cigarette in one hand and said faintly, "I have many stories in the past. Sumo was quite angry, but he still chose to be with me." Huan, when a man really loves a woman, there's no one else in his eyes except for scumbags. Huan looked at Kong Xiao, said after a long while, "Actually, you and Qin Mo both have scumbags." Kong Xiao almost burned his hand with the cigarette. He turned to look at Huan and said helplessly, "I'm very loyal." He paused and said in a low voice, "Actually, Qin Mo is very loyal. I've never seen him with anyone else in all these years at King Entertainment." Huan pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Kong Xiao, on the other hand, sent her directly to her residence. When Huan opened the car door, Kong Xiao asked her, "Do you want me to send you up?" Huan raised his arm and smiled. "It's just a small injury. It's not a big problem." Kong Xiao also smiled and said, "Okay, then I'll go back to the hotel. If I can't do it tomorrow, I'll take a day off. Anyway, I'm almost done with the shooting. A day or 2 doesn't matter." Most importantly, the budget for this show was more than sufficient, so there was nothing to worry about. Huan nodded and went upstairs after saying goodbye to him. Qin Mo was at home. At this time, he was sitting in the living room for a group's video 1 channel meeting. Ever since he moved to Sea City, he had been having meetings on Video 1 channel. When Huan came in, he glanced at her, indicating that she still had some time. However, 2 seconds later, Qin Mo turned to look at Huan. Then, he looked at the screen and said that the meeting was over. The senior management of King Entertainment's headquarters were dumbfounded, but Big Boss had the final say. Qin Mo closed his notebook and walked towards Huan. He frowned and asked, "What's wrong with your arm?" Chapter 43:23. Huan bit her lower lip and said, "I accidentally scratched myself on the set. Kong Xiao sent me to the hospital before he left." Qin Mo held her arm carefully and looked at it carefully. He heaved a sigh of relief when he was sure that it was just a minor injury. He looked up and stared at her little face for a long time before he said expressionlessly, "Being a director can also get hurt. You're not going anywhere. I'll go to the set with you starting tomorrow." Huan was speechless. It's just a minor injury. He was still expressionless and didn't look like he was easy to talk to. Just a minor injury? Huan saw that his expression was not one to be trifled with, so she lowered her voice even more. "It's just a minor injury." Qin Mo stared at her for a few more seconds before he suddenly picked her up and walked to the bedroom. Huan hurriedly wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "What's wrong?" Qin Mo walked straight into the bedroom and carefully placed her on the bed. Then, he called Qin Shun and said a few words. Huan didn't feel good when she heard it. "It's just a minor injury. There's no need to get so many people involved. He actually wanted the best surgeon in Sea City to examine her. He was crazy. Chin Mo hung up the phone and looked at her. Huan couldn't help but say, "It's only a 2-centimeter wound. There's no need for stitches. It's already been treated." Chin Mo, he glanced at her and then began to call again. This time, she didn't know where he was calling. After the call, he looked at Huan and said, "You don't have to film tomorrow. Take a day off." Huan was furious. "I'm the director, Chin Mo. I'm the director's man." His gaze was gloomy. Huan was a little angry. "Don't think that you're my man just because you've slept with me a few times." The light in his eyes was very strange. He stared at her for a while before he said faintly, "Then tell me, what should I do?" As he said that, his fingers gently stroked her delicate face. "Have a few more children to prove my existence? You're shameless." Huan blushed. Chin Mo bent down, his handsome face right next to her neck. His voice was hoarse. "Actually, I enjoyed the process of making a child. Director I remember that you enjoyed it too." Huan bit her lip and raised her hand to push him away, but she accidentally pulled her wound. She snorted and put her hand down. Chin Mo's expression changed. He gently held her arm and gently rubbed around. He looked at her again. "Does it hurt? Who told you to get so close?" Huan said angrily, "It's just a small injury. Tell the doctor not to come. I'm not made of paper." Of course, Chin Mo was stubborn. He just helped her loosen her arms. After a while, the doctor came. He was the director of a certain hospital. He was a very authoritative person. With his medical skills, Principal Su didn't find it strange that he came over to check on a 2-centimeter wound. After all, most of the nobles were like this, and most of them were making a fuss over nothing. The director looked at it solemnly and then looked at the medicine. He said that there was no problem. However, Chin Mo still had some requests. In the end, the director still left a bottle of medicine for external use. He said that it was a secret medicine of the Qing dynasty and that it would not leave any scars after being applied. After sending the director off, Huan leaned against the headboard and did not make a sound. Meanwhile, Chin Mo was studying the small box of medicine. When he opened it, a fragrant aroma assailed his nostrils. It was obvious that it was not an ordinary medicine. Chin Mo looked at Huan again. Huan said unhappily, "Such a small injury won't leave any scars. Moreover, it's on my body, not yours." Chapter 43:24. Chin Mo's gaze was deep. After a while, he smiled and pinched Huan's face. "But I'm the one enjoying it." She glared at him and scolded him for being shameless. He smiled shamelessly. "Huan, you don't understand men. Men are actually very shallow." Huan turned her body away and ignored him. She closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. Chin Mo just smiled and laid her down. He said gently, "Sleep for a while. I'll wake you up for dinner." He even covered her with the quilt. Huan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't want to sleep, but she didn't want to talk to him, so she closed her eyes. Chin Mo looked at her quietly for a while before he left to cook for himself. In addition to the normal food, he also made a bowl of red bean soup. It was blood-nourishing and tasted delicious. When Huan woke up, she smelled the aroma of food. Beside her, there was another pleasant smell. She knew that Chin Mo was beside her. She moved and leaned her head on his shoulder. Her voice was a little hoarse. "You're so particular. You take a shower after cooking." He smiled and reached out to rub her soft hair. "I can't stand the smell of oil and smoke." "Then don't cook. Let someone else do it." She put her head on his lap and didn't hurry to get up. She leaned against him like a docile kitten. Maybe it was because of a small injury. Huan never knew that she was such a coquettish person. Chin Mo smiled. It's different today. He was the president of a company. It was not easy for him to work in Sea City. He didn't have time to stay in the kitchen every day. He wasn't a wishy-washy man who thought that cooking for a woman was true love. A good man would give a woman a sense of security. It was different today. She was injured. Was it also a way for a good man to show off? Huan poked him with her little hand and asked with a smile, "What did you make?" Chin Mo thought for a moment. "Your favorite food. There's also blood-nourishing porridge, blood-glutinous rice, red beans, and red dates. He Huan frowned. I don't want to eat red beans. Red beans were the food she hated the most. However, Qin and Mo insisted, you must eat some. He coaxed her again. Be good. I don't want to be obedient. He Huan bit her lip. I think you want to poison me. Qin and Mo reached out to hold her little chin and twisted it dangerously. What's in it for me to poison you? I don't know, He Huan said softly. Anyway, you made me drink red bean soup to poison me. Qin and Mo was exasperated and amused at the same time. He Huan, are you being reasonable? She blinked. If you don't let me drink, I'll be reasonable. He stared at her for a moment, then said, forget it, and picked her up. He Huan hugged his neck and continued to bargain. I just don't want to eat red beans. Qin and Mo looked at her, and his eyes became a little deep. What else do you hate the most besides red beans? His voice suddenly became hoarse. If you don't want to eat red beans, let's choose something else. He Huan didn't realize what he meant until a few seconds later. She blushed and glared at him. Qin and Mo smiled and pinched her face. Are you willing to eat it now? He Huan glared at him angrily. You're so hateful. Chapter 43:25. Is this your first time hearing about it? He laughed and placed her on the back of the seat. He pressed his hands on the seat and said in a husky voice, Mrs. Qin, be content. It's rare for me to coax someone. He Huan tilted her head and looked at him. His eyes were clear and bright, as if he was laughing at her. He Huan couldn't help but recall that after her first period, she didn't allow him to tell anyone about it. At that time, Qin and Mo only laughed. In the afternoon, he waited for her at the school gate. Seeing him reminded He Huan of what happened last night, so she didn't want to go with him. But Qin and Mo insisted. He Huan walked in front of him, and Qin and Mo followed behind. He even put his jacket on her and said uncomfortably, I heard that girls can't get cold on special occasions. He Huan turned her head and looked at him strangely. Qin Mo's temperature is 32 degrees today. Put it on, there's air conditioning in the car. He grabbed her hand and carried her in his arms. This was in school, and it was the middle school department. Among the thousands of people in the school who didn't know Qin and Mo, he was handsome and came from a rich family. Countless girls were waiting for his attention, but he was interested in a little brat from the middle school department. There were many people after school, so He Huan struggled in his arms. Qin and Mo, let go of me. He was so shameless. She was nobody to him, and now her reputation was ruined. He Huan was only 15 years old, and she was engaged by Qin and Mo. After that hug, no boys dared to send her love letters because the whole school was saying that she was Qin Mo's girlfriend. He Huan was furious and said that she was still young. Then, Qin and Mo looked her up and down. She remembered clearly that he paused for a while and said that she was not young anymore. Anyway, he was not a good person. He Huan was so angry in the car that she ignored him. Then, Qin and Mo pulled her into his arms and rubbed her belly. When she was unprepared, she struggled and screamed, but the driver pretended not to see it. He had watched them grow up and knew that they were going to get married in the future. But the driver only saw the beginning, not the ending. Qin and Mo held He Huan in his arms and kissed her hair. Does it still hurt? He Huan, who was in her teens, really wanted to tell him that it hurt, but she held back and twisted her body. It doesn't hurt anymore. Put me down. He naturally refused, so she struggled. She really felt that Uncle Zhao would see her in the car. If he went back and told her, would she really have a child with Qin and Mo? She didn't know about the adult world, but she knew that Uncle Qin and Auntie Yi both wanted her to marry into the Qin family. He Huan was still young, so of course she didn't want to. She had secretly read in a book that two people who got married were in love, but she and Qin and Mo. Forget it. He was always so fierce and domineering. They were not in love. It was more like they wanted to kill each other. She also knew that he would be going abroad to study very soon. At most, it would be half a year. She just needed to endure it. So in this half a year, she definitely couldn't let him take advantage of her. But He Huan's struggle unintentionally caused some kind of trouble for Qin and Mo. The 19-year-old Qin and Mo was a little embarrassed for the first time, and his voice was also a little hoarse. Don't move. He Huan was stunned, and then her face heated up. She didn't dare to move anymore. Chapter 43:26. Huan didn't dare to move, feeling something she shouldn't be feeling. She didn't dare to move, afraid that he would do something bad. After all, Chinamo was a bad person to begin with. Chinamo, on the other hand, laughed. He wrapped her up in his jacket and hugged her easily. Actually, old Zhao was a little worried. After all, young Master Qin was young and hot-blooded. If he wasn't careful, he might do something out of line. Moreover, they were in his car. How was he going to explain it? However, if something really happened, he still had to say it. Chinamo had to take responsibility, even though Huan was a little young. Thankfully, Chinamo held it in. As old Zhao drove, he secretly listened to the whispers behind him. Chinamo lowered his head and looked at Huan, saying calmly, "Come to my house tonight." Huan glared at him. "Why?" "Because Uncle Kaim and Annie Sue are away on a business trip. You're the only one at home," Chinamo said matter-of-factly. Huan was furious. She reached out and wanted to call her parents, especially her mom. It was the first time a girl had her period, and she wanted her mother to accompany her, not the annoying Chinamo. Huan turned her face away and wanted to get down from his lap, but Chinamo held her body and did not let her move. Then he said a few words to Lao Zhao. The car fell silent. The quieter it was, the more uncomfortable Huan felt. Then the car stopped in front of the black carved gate of Chiu Garden. The gate opened slowly and the car drove in. When the door opened, Huan didn't want to get off. She pouted. "I want to go home." Chinamo was still hugging her, staring at her face. "This is your home." "No," she muttered softly, not daring to speak loudly to him. Chinamo looked at her. "You've lived with the Qin family since you were young. You spent more time here than at your own home. Isn't this your home now?" Huan felt a little awkward. She bit her lip. "I just want to go home." Chinamo exhaled, then looked at her and said expressionlessly, "Then I'll go back with you." Huan stared at him and did not say a word for a long time. For a long time, she didn't say anything, but she moved down from the chair and walked into the hall of the villa with a little pride. Chinamo smiled, opened the door, and got out of the car. As soon as Huan entered the dining room, she saw a plate of nourishing red beans on the table. She immediately frowned. "I don't want to drink it," just like poisoning her. But in the end, she was still forced to drink by Chinamo because he dismissed all the servants. Then, he carried her on his lap and either kissed or drank. From that day on, Huan equated red bean with Chinamo. At one point, his kiss was like a red bean, as if he was trying to poison her to death. Just like now, Chinamo was using this trick to deal with her. In the condominium, Huan stared at the red beans and said, "I don't want to drink it." Chinamo looked at her and knew that she was thinking about the past, so he smiled and said, "Choose one." "Nope," she harumphed. Chinamo lowered his head and looked at her. Then he hugged her and kissed her. "Still not choosing?" Huan looked up and resisted. "Chinamo, you can't always do this." Chinamo smiled. "What?" Then he leaned in and whispered in her ear, "It didn't work last night, did it? Do you want to use it tonight?" Chapter 43:27. Huan glared at him and picked up the bowl of red bean soup. She wanted to drink in one go, but she lost her courage after a while. She stared at his face. "I only bled a little. You still have to drink it." Chinamo smiled and suddenly said, "Actually, watching you drink this is also a kind of pleasure." Huan was speechless. Sitting on his lap was another pleasure of Chinamo. Huan felt that he was quite a pervert. However, she looked at the red bean soup and couldn't drink it. She frowned and stared at it for a long time. In the end, it was Chinamo who picked up the bowl and looked at her. "I'll feed you." Huan was still staring at him. Her eyes were watery. She was like this every time she drank the red bean soup. Usually, no matter how fierce he was, she didn't feel any pain. Chinamo felt sorry for her, but at the same time, he found it funny. He fed her slowly on purpose, enjoying the bitter look on her face. As time went by, Huan probably knew about his dark thoughts, but she could only be angry. Every time she took a sip, her face would turn bitter, which made Chinamo laugh. He then said in a low voice, "Do you have to be more careful next time?" Huan glanced at him. "You're making a fuss." It's just a small injury. Chin Mo's expression immediately turned ugly. He looked at her. It's a small injury this time. What about next time? What if it's a big fragment? What will you do? He Huan said slowly, then drink a few more bowls of red bean soup. Chin Mo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He now overlapped her with the He Huan of the past. It was as if she was still a little girl in her teens who had her period and he had to worry about everything. He stared at her. Other than this, I don't have to worry about the wound? He Huan snorted. Didn't Dean Su give you medicine? Medicine isn't omnipotent. He couldn't help but pinch her cheek. She would only be a little more obedient after drinking the red bean soup. This was also the reason why Chin Mo especially liked to let her drink red bean soup all these years. It was also very dark. He Huan didn't say anything, and Chin Mo started feeding her. The red bean soup was just a prelude. Feeding was necessary after that, except for the few years she was abroad. In those years, their relationship was tense, and she rarely came back. However, every time he went abroad, he would visit her, but she didn't appreciate it. This was the first time he had fed her since she had returned to the country. It seemed to have been many years since the last time. They were much older, but he was able to do it with ease. For some reason, He Huan just sat there obediently and let him feed her. They were not young anymore, but at this moment, it was as if they had returned to the time when she was 15 and he was not even 20. He Huan was a lot more spoiled now. She would never eat anything she didn't like. After eating the red beans, she became obedient, but she was also spoiled and needed to be coaxed. Chin Mo fed her patiently. Seeing that He Huan was still sitting on his lap, he patted her and said, "Okay, good girl. Sit over there. I'll eat first. I'll apply the ointment for you later." He Huan looked at him with a face that made people's hair stand. After a while, she ran away. Chin Mo smiled faintly and watched her leave. Then he started eating. He Huan played games on his phone. After playing for a while, she suddenly remembered the email she had received. She glanced at him and said, "I'll go to the study." Chin Mo frowned. "You're injured. You need to rest." Chapter 43:28. Chin Mo glanced at her again and let her go. He Huan went to the study and turned on the computer to check the email. She opened it and saw pages of information. They were all about AIGA's treatment in America and some photos. Of course, there were also photos of Chin Mo. It was rare to find them after such a long time. She scrolled down the page, and at the end, there was a photo of Chin Mo and AIGA. It wasn't exactly a romantic picture. Chin Mo was standing with AIGA's head resting on Chin Mo's shoulder. Chin Mo lowered his head to look at AIGA. There was a hint of tenderness in his gaze. It wasn't love, it was tenderness, or perhaps it was pity. This was the first time He Huan saw tenderness in his gaze towards someone of the opposite sex. Although he wasn't hugging AIGA, he didn't seem to be pushing her away either. He Huan's heart skipped a beat. She had to admit that looking at the way he was taking care of her made her feel uncomfortable. But she couldn't seem to find anything wrong with it. At that time, Chin Lu had passed away and AIGA had a miscarriage. She scrolled to the end and saw the results. AIGA was indeed pregnant and had a miscarriage. He Huan closed her eyes and was about to destroy the email when she pressed one arm on the computer screen. He Huan looked up and looked at Chin Mo. Chin Mo reached out to stop her from unplugging the computer. He walked over and said, "What are you secretly looking at?" "AV." He Huan's face turned red. "I'm not." Then, as Chin Mo spoke, he sat on the seat she was sitting on. He Huan was placed on his lap with one arm. He Huan bit her lip. She wanted to turn off the computer, but he grabbed her hand. When Chin Mo saw the image on the computer, he was stunned. He lowered his head and looked at her. "You're investigating AIGA?" He Huan turned her face to the side. Chin Mo flipped through the email. When he saw the photo, he looked at He Huan again. He Huan pretended not to see his expression, but she knew that he had seen it. Chin Mo browsed through the documents and then said in a low voice, "Are you investigating AIGA, or are you investigating whether there is anything going on between me and her?" He Huan looked down. "I accidentally received this email." "Accidentally?" Chin Mo laughed and deleted the email. Then he hugged her with one hand and pinched her delicate chin with the other. He didn't say anything and just looked at her. His gaze made Ihuan's hair stand on end. She stared at him and said very slowly, "Aren't you going to apply medicine for me?" For the first time, she took the initiative to stretch out her slender arm for him to apply the medicine. In the past, she had refused to do it because she was afraid of pain. Chinemo smiled faintly, but Ihuan's scalp tightened. She heard him say slowly, "Today, I might need to apply the medicine in another place." Ihuan knew that even though he could avoid death, he couldn't escape punishment. She closed her eyes. "What do you want?" He didn't do anything immediately. His fingers moved gently on her face. After a while, he smiled. "Lie down." Ihuan thought that she had heard it wrong. She widened her eyes. "Chinemo, you can't." She was so ashamed that she couldn't say the last few words. Compared to her anger, he was very calm. "Of course I can." As he said that, he held her waist with one hand and flipped her over on his knee. That posture was as though he was going to beat her up. Ihuan screamed, "Chinemo, let go of me. I'm injured." "You're injured. I'll apply medicine for you later and add 2 bowls of red beans." He gritted his teeth and said. Chapter 43:29. Ihuan was furious. She lay there awkwardly and said in a trembling voice, "Chinemo, you bastard." Chinemo, on the other hand, was admiring her frightened look. He put the medicine aside with one hand and placed the other on the place where she was about to be hit. He said in a low and hoarse voice, "Are you scared?" "I'm not scared." Ihuan's voice was trembling. She felt his hand pinching her chin again. "Yes." Ihuan bit her lower lip. "Put me down." Chinemo pinched her chin and gently forced her to look up. Ihuan's eyes met with a pair of deep and clear eyes. There seemed to be a smile in his dark eyes. There was also a hint of scrutiny as he stared at her quietly. Ihuan was a little stunned and couldn't say a word. Chinmo's fingers moved dangerously, preparing to hit her, but when she realized what he was going to do, Ihuan screamed, "Chinemo, I don't want it." She had to take it even if she didn't want it. After Chinemo pulled her down, he adjusted the angle of his phone and took a picture in her direction. Then he began to hit her. His expression was very focused, and there was a hint of abstinence. Ihuan was stunned at first. She didn't think that he would really hit her like this. Then she felt ashamed and angry. She was so big. It was okay for him to hit her, but he even recorded it. Ihuan struggled, but he didn't let her. He pressed her back with one hand and stopped her from moving. Then he punished her a little more fiercely. In the end, Ihuan still cried. She laid her little head on his lap and cried miserably, and it was a little embarrassing. Chinemo hit her a few more times before he stopped. His voice was especially hoarse. "Are you still suspecting me?" He reached out and took the medicine. He looked down and stared at the red spot where she was hit. His gaze was a little hot. Ihuan was still crying. She looked a little pitiful. Chinmo's eyes were full of tenderness. He touched her with his fingers and said hoarsely, "You're already so big, but you're still crying. It's embarrassing." Ihuan lay on her stomach and didn't want to move. Chinemo looked at her little face for a while before opening the exquisite little box. He picked a little on his fingertip and gently rubbed it on her wound. Actually, he wasn't injured, just a little red and swollen. How could he bear to do that? But even so, she was still so angry that she couldn't stop crying, looking like she had been bullied. Chinemo reached out and rubbed it for her. "Does it hurt? What do you think?" Ihuan was so angry that she lowered her head and bit his leg again. Chinmo's eyes darkened again. He lowered his head. "You're a puppy." Ihuan loosened her mouth, but she was still glaring at him in dissatisfaction. Chinmo's gaze didn't shift away. It was fixed on her face. After a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, "Do you know your mistake?" Ihuan didn't want to talk to him, so she lay on her stomach. Chinemo didn't make things difficult for her. He helped her apply the medicine and adjusted her clothes. While he did that, he looked at her quietly for a while. He carried her on his knees and began to apply the medicine on her arm. She couldn't help but move a little when she was sitting on his lap. Chinemo looked at her quietly and helped her apply the medicine calmly. As soon as he was done, Ihuan wanted to run away, but he hugged her from behind. "Why are you running?" Huan struggled silently. I have something to do. He didn't let go and said in a hoarse voice, I have something to do too. Huan was a little angry. His matter was probably just that. She could imagine it even with her knees. Chapter 43:30. Of course, she was unwilling. She struggled to run away, but Qin Mo held her down and pulled her into his arms again. Huan was furious. This is the study. He raised his eyebrows. Study? Isn't that a place to do bad things? As he spoke, he pressed on the computer. For example, this. He wanted to do it without any explanation. Huan almost jumped up. You're a disgrace. Qin Mo stared into her eyes. His gaze was clear and bright. He was still sitting, but with one hand holding her, the other hand swept across the table. Everything on the table, including the computer, fell to the ground. As for Huan, she was placed in the place that he had cleared out. She wanted to leave, but he held her down and stopped her from moving. He raised his other hand and started to unbutton his shirt, but his expression was one of abstinence. I want to do the most erotic things in the most proper place. He wanted to know if it was erotic or not. She only knew that it was painful. What the fuck? Meanwhile, Qin Mo laughed happily and carried her back to the bedroom to bully her a few more times. However, no one expected that the photo of Qin Mo and AI Jia would be trending on Weibo the next day. Moreover, it was the #1 trending topic. One was a pop queen, and the other was the boss of an entertainment company. The photo was so beautiful that it was trending all of a sudden. When Qin Mo received the news, it was already 10 in the morning the next day. He woke up. The consequences of indulging in lust. He picked up the phone and heard Secretary He's slightly nervous voice. CEO Qin, your photo with AI Jia is on the hot search list. Qin Mo frowned. He walked to the study and turned on the computer. Then, he saw a familiar photo. It was the one he saw last night. He was sure that it wasn't Huan who did it. She wouldn't be so stupid and wouldn't want others to see it. She clearly cared about it, so there was only one possibility. It was AI Jia. He immediately instructed, don't worry about it. Then, he called AI Jia. AI Jia picked up, and Qin Mo asked her directly, did you put the photo there? AI Jia paused for a moment before replying, Qin Mo, I'm in America, undergoing surgery. I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't have the energy to do anything. Qin Mo frowned, hung up the phone, and called K, a famous hacker. Find out who bought the trending topic. Also, I want AI Jia's whereabouts, including her surgery. After hanging up, he dialed Secretary He's number again. Remove the trending topic and don't tell Huan about this. Secretary He immediately went to do it and removed it within 5 minutes. He even deleted all the content on it, leaving nothing behind. Just then, K's information was sent over. Qin Mo received it and opened it. This was an unexpected result. It was a record of Huan's bank transfer. 500,000 was used to buy exposure. Qin Mo looked at it quietly for a long time before he was sure that it was Huan's. He didn't say anything but slowly sat down on the sofa. He didn't know why Huan was doing this. But this transfer record was indeed Huan's. Qin Mo was about to delete it when the study door opened. Huan's face was pale. He guessed that while he was dealing with it, she had already received the news or someone else had sent it to her. He smiled at her. Come here. I didn't do it, Huan said quietly, standing at the door in her pajamas. After she woke up, she received a message from the bank. She had transferred 500,000 to a certain Lang. Chapter 43:31. Qin Mo still let her go. Huan looked at him stubbornly. You've investigated it. You think I did it, right? Just because I investigated your past with AI Jia. Qin Mo's voice was a little hoarse. Huan, she kept looking at him and said softly, would you believe me if I said AI Jia did it? Qin Mo still walked over and reached out to hold her hand. AI Jia is having an operation abroad. So you think I did it? Huan bit her lip. I didn't do it. Qin Mo picked her up. Why don't you wear shoes? She still wanted to discuss this topic with him. But Qin Mo didn't seem to want to talk about it anymore. Huan's heart was a little tight. He put her on the bed, and he gently helped her put on her shoes. But she didn't feel happy at all. She pulled his sleeve and looked up. Chinamo, are you protecting me or AI Jia? He squatted down and looked at her. He reached out and rubbed her hair. Let me investigate this matter. The transfer records did come from your account. Huan was a little absent-minded at first, but she suddenly became sober. She stared at him for a while and said slowly, if AI Jia did it, what would you do? Chin Mo sighed. Huan, let me investigate it first, okay? Leave everything to me. Huan didn't say anything. Maybe she was a little disappointed. She thought that if AI Jia did it, he wouldn't do anything to AI Jia. She didn't say anything. Chinamo rubbed her little head. Be good. Don't think too much. It's not a big deal. But you suspect me, don't you? Huan clenched her fists quietly. Chinamo picked her up and comforted her. No, never. Huan was still a little absent-minded. She had felt like this since she saw the photos. She didn't know how she fell asleep. When she woke up, the apartment was very quiet. She called Chinmo's name, but there was no sound. Huan couldn't find him anywhere. She thought about it and dialed his number. Chinmo answered and said he would be back soon. In less than 10 minutes, he came back. He was wearing outdoor clothes and said that he had gone out for a while. He knew what Huan wanted to ask, so he said in a low voice, yes, it was done by a hacker. He handed her a document, and Huan was stunned after reading it. How could this be? It was done by one of the top hackers in the country. He was very famous. Ordinary people can't do this, Chin Mo whispered. He's hiding abroad, but I'll find him. Huan looked down. I understand. She felt that something was wrong. Chin Mo's voice was calm. It's not AI Jia. I've checked. They don't know each other. Huan sat down on the sofa slowly. After a long time, she looked up at Chin Mo and suddenly said, Chin Mo, I'm a little scared. Huan had been stubborn since she was young and had never been scared. But this time she was scared. She felt that the person behind her would appear at any time and break her peace. What she and Chin Mo had now. Chin Mo reached out and caressed her face gently. It's not a big deal. Take care of it. He hugged her in his arms. When she couldn't see, his eyes were filled with coldness. Actually, he had found out that it was done by AI Meng Meng. She was an artist from King Entertainment and the second female lead of Twin. But Chin Mo couldn't do anything to her. He couldn't tell Huan about it either. He didn't want her to be sad. Chapter 43-32. After the short incident, Chin Mo went back to B City. 3 days later, he went to C City to accompany Huan. However, after this incident, it was obvious that there were some problems between the two of them. Even their sex at night was slightly affected. Huan was obviously not in the right state of mind. Chin Mo was quite considerate. Sensing that she was not in the mood, he did not force her. After holding back for a long time, he would hug her gently. Of course, President Chin was very dissatisfied with this pace, but he still endured it. This situation lasted until the completion of filming for Twin. The party was also held in a hotel in C City. It was not a big place, and the crew and some familiar reporters were there. After taking some photos and accepting the interview, the banquet began. During dinner, Kong Xiao sat next to Huan and said in a low voice, We still haven't sorted out what happened last time. I see that you and President Chin are still not that good. Is there anything I can help you with? Huan held the red wine and shook her head gently. It's nothing. She smiled at Kong Xiao. I heard that Su Mo is pregnant. Congratulations, Kong Xiao. She seemed to have thought of something and took out a box from her bag. This is for Su Mo. Kong Xiao looked at the box and knew that it was expensive, but he still accepted it and only said thank you. Given their relationship, this gift could be accepted. Huan smiled slightly and chatted with Kong Xiao about something else. However, she felt that Kong Xiao was hesitant to say something, so Huan did not ask. Later, Kong Xiao went elsewhere to socialize, and Huan was left alone. AI Meng Meng came over. Director let me drink to you. Huan tilted her head and smiled lightly. She picked up her glass and clinked it with AI Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng was a woman who was very good at acting coquettishly. Or rather, most women in the entertainment industry had a way with men, especially second and third-rate celebrities like AI Meng Meng. Therefore, when faced with Huan, A director who was even better looking than her. She could still be flirtatious. Huan had seen this many times, so she did not think much of it and did not want to provoke any resentment. She took a sip, thinking that the social interaction was almost over. But when she saw that AI Meng Meng was still there, Huan was surprised. Is there anything else? AI Meng Meng's entire body was about to stick to him. Her breath smelled like orchids. Thank you, Director He, for your guidance. Here's another toast to you. Huan frowned slightly, but still gave her face and took another sip. But AI Meng Meng still didn't leave. She looked like she wanted to give herself to Huan. Huan was speechless. She reminded her, there are many producers and producers over there. You can socialize with them. It'll be good for you in the future. AI Meng Meng smiled oddly. Actually, the person I should thank the most is Director He. Huan didn't understand, but she didn't want to understand either. She had never cared much about interpersonal relationships. Thus, she only smiled faintly. This smile was somewhat distant. AI Meng Meng leaned closer and whispered, Director He, I'm very grateful to you, so I still have something to tell you. Huan glanced at her. AI Meng Meng lowered her voice even more. You can check President Qin's travel records. He went to America once and didn't use his private plane. Huan's heart skipped a beat. Then, she looked at AI Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng revealed a shy expression again. There's one more thing. Rong, you and I are together. Chapter 43:33. Huan was stunned again as she looked at the young girl in front of her. AI Meng Meng wasn't particularly good-looking, and she didn't understand why Rong Yu had chosen her. AI Meng Meng explained her confusion. We got together that night after Rong Yu left the set. She said that Rong Yu was drunk, and she took advantage of the situation. Then she looked at Huan with a vulnerable face. Director He, you won't be angry. Why would I be angry? Huan came back to her senses and smiled. Congratulations. Although she said that, she knew that Rong Yu hadn't mentioned it before. It seemed that it wasn't as simple as it seemed. However, she didn't say it out loud. After all, it was someone else's private matter. Besides, she was more focused on the matter of Qin Mo going to the United States. She was indifferent. AI Meng Meng felt bored and left first. Huan sat there alone and gradually felt a little cold. Only then did she realize that it was already early autumn. She reached out to gather the clothes on her shoulders and slowly hugged herself. It was already 11 p.m. when she left the hotel. Qin Mo had come to pick her up. He was leaning against a mulsan and smoking. His black suit made him look tall and slender under the dim yellow light. His face was especially elegant and good-looking. Even in the entertainment industry, there weren't many people with such a face. Huan stopped and looked at him quietly under the moonlight. Qin Mo walked over slowly and took off his jacket. He put on her shoulders and buttoned it up one by one. Huan looked up at him and didn't say a word. Finally, he buttoned it up and smiled. All right, let's go home. Huan was still looking at him. After a long time, she slowly took a step forward. Qin Mo put his arm around her shoulders and felt her shoulders stiffen. Is our relationship so bad that I can't even touch you? He asked in a low voice. It was a very oppressive tone. Huan looked down. No, prove it to me, he said in an even more oppressive tone. Huan spat out 2 words. Lame. Probably because he had been suppressing his anger for too long. Those 2 words completely ignited his anger. He threw Huan into the car, and he quickly got into the car and drove away. Huan was lost for words. Qin Mo, his voice was low. You'd better not speak. She didn't want to talk anymore. After a while, she couldn't help but say, I want to stay in a hotel tonight. Qin Mo was driving very fast. After hearing her words, he made a sharp turn and repositioned himself. It was a 5-star hotel owned by GM. Huan did not speak again. 10 minutes later, the car stopped at the entrance of the GM hotel. She opened the car door, got out, and walked inside. However, Qin Mo also came down and grabbed her hand. Huan froze for a moment and turned to look at him. Don't you like to stay in hotels? I'll fulfill your wish. He dragged her to the lobby of the hotel roughly and swiped his card for a presidential suite. Everyone in the GM hotel knew that he was the son of the Qin family. Because the Tang and Qin families were in-laws, Qin and Mo was now the head of the family, and the girl he was holding was... Huan was ashamed and angry. She struggled desperately, trying to break free. Qin and Mo, let go of me, you bastard. The receptionists were shocked. The girl was forced. Qin and Mo, on the other hand, carried Huan in his arms. Stop it, Mrs. Qin. Chapter 43-34. That scene was simply soft to the core. The receptionist's heart skipped a beat. Oh my God, it's Mrs. Qin. That's director He, who was filming in Sea City. She heard that President Qin was filming with his wife in a mansion and was now staying in a hotel. Love? Really? Okay, someone suggested. Let's take a photo and post it on WeChat. Then, the receptionist took a hot photo and posted it on WeChat and Weibo. They even boldly tagged a few famous celebrities in the entertainment industry. So, in less than an hour, the hashtag President Qin and Huan at the GM Hotel became a trending topic. The netizens' heated discussion was also very unethical. However, Qin and Mo and Huan didn't know that Qin and Mo had half-forced Huan. He dragged her into the suite and kissed her on the door. Huan was furious and slapped him. The slap probably aroused Qin Mo's animal instincts. He gently pinched her chin and looked down at her. How much longer do you want to do this? Huan's breath was in a mess. She glared at him. Qin and Mo leaned forward again and kissed her fiercely, ignoring her objections. In the end, he succeeded. It was a little rough, but he didn't completely disregard her feelings. He was very happy, but Huan was tortured badly. When it was over, she curled up on the bed and quietly lay on her side. There was a tear in the corner of her eye. Qin and Mo hugged her from behind. His voice was hoarse. Why are you crying? Did I make you uncomfortable? She ignored him and curled up even more. Qin and Mo couldn't stand her like this. He kissed her neck. Let's do it again. Her body trembled. I don't want it anymore. Qin and Mo put his hand down again. He leaned against the bed and pulled Huan into his arms. She was like a little beast in his arms. Her thin, snowy shoulders were covered with a thin blanket. She was probably exhausted. Qin and Mo did not force her to speak. He just reached out and rubbed her shoulders. When he touched the place where he touched her, her little body trembled. He chuckled, "What's wrong?" Huan pulled his hand to the side, placed it flat on his chest, and pressed her face against it. He knew that she probably had something to say, so he waited quietly. After a long time, Huan said, "Qin and Mo, did you go to the U.S. last month to see AI Jia?" Qin Mo's hand froze. After a long time, he sighed. "I found a doctor for her. Shun recommended him." He lowered his head. "Are you unhappy?" Huan didn't answer. She got up and went to the bathroom to take a shower. However, Qin and Mo followed her in and hugged her from behind. He didn't say anything and just kissed her. She knew what he wanted, and she gave it to him. But this way, she was more or less absent-minded and a little depressed. When she slept, she also carried him on her back. Even though he was hugging her, he could feel her resistance. "I just found a doctor for her. Nothing else, not even a hug from an old friend." Late at night, Qin and Mo whispered behind her ear. Huan stayed quiet and didn't say anything. He said a lot, but she didn't respond. It wasn't until late at night that she said softly, "There are some things that you don't need to do in person. I don't know if you went to the U.S. because she wanted to see you or because you wanted to see her. Qin and Mo, I won't investigate you anymore, but I also need a sense of security and enough trust." Qin and Mo let out a long breath. He wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Huan. "Sex can't change anything. Qin and Mo, just because you and AI aren't intimate doesn't mean that I won't feel uncomfortable." Chapter 43-35. With that said, she got up. "I'll sleep in the small room." Qin and Mo wanted to grab her, and he did. But the moment Huan turned around, he was stunned. She was crying. Huan was a stubborn person, and she rarely cried. Even when she was seriously injured when she was young, she didn't cry and tried her best to hold it in. But now she was crying. Her voice was unbelievably hoarse as she said in a very low voice, "Qin and Mo, you might think that I'm easy to bully. Yes, you're a man, You're the high and mighty President Qin. You and Qin Lu are brothers, but AI Jia isn't your wife. She took a deep breath. Besides, how I choose is my own business. After she said that, Qin Mo looked at her and said expressionlessly, He Huan, what do you mean? Can we break up? With that said, she flung his hand away and walked towards the other room. Qin Mo was stunned for a moment, but the door was already closed. He walked over and knocked on the door. His voice was also very hoarse. He Huan, open the door. There was no movement inside, and He Huan didn't seem to want to open the door. Qin Mo leaned against the door. He Huan, be reasonable. There was still no movement inside. He tried to open the door, but it was locked. Qin Mo said a few more words to her outside, but she still didn't make a sound. He was a little angry, but he held it in and called the front desk. Send me the key to the secondary room. The front desk looked at the time. Damn, it's already 2 in the morning, and President Qin still isn't sleeping. Is he hiding because he doesn't want to be his wife anymore? But gossip aside, she still had to do something. The front desk lady immediately sent the key over. Moreover, President Qin's face was very dark, and it was obvious that he was unhappy. So, the front desk lady didn't dare to stay any longer and slipped away immediately. Qin Mo took the key and hesitated before opening the door. He wasn't a man who could resist the Cold War, so he opened the door firmly. The moment the door opened, Qin Mo's heart ached. He wanted to not sleep. She sat on the carpet at the end of the bed, lost in thought. She was crying, but no sound came out. She hung her head as if she had a nightmare when she was a child. Qin Mo's heart ached. Her nightmare was now him. He walked over lightly and squatted in front of her. He reached out and stroked her shoulder-length hair. Your hair has grown so long. She ignored him and didn't stop him, but this made him even more sad and uncomfortable. Qin Mo whispered, Don't cry, Huan Huan. He Huan finally opened her mouth to reject his existence. Go away. I don't want to see you. Then who do you want to see? Rongyu? He stared at her little face. He Huan, I've explained. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, she slowly raised her eyes to look at him. Her eyes were watery as she stared at him. Then, she sniffed. You're not leaving? If you're not leaving, then I'll leave. In fact, she was already very weak at this time, but she still stubbornly walked out with only a bathrobe on her body. Qin Mo easily dragged her back. This time, he was really angry. He Huan, can you be more rational? It's the middle of the night. Where do you want to go? To a place without you, she replied quickly. Then, she saw that Qin Mo's face was very ugly, and there was danger hidden in his eyes. He Huan took a step back. Qin Mo grabbed her arm and dragged her into the master bedroom. Chapter 43-36. Qin Mo grabbed her arm and dragged her into the master bedroom. He grabbed his tie, tied her hands, and put them on the bedside pillar. His voice was a little cold. I'll let you go when you've thought it through. He Huan's posture was a little unbearable. She stared at him in disbelief and struggled. Qin Mo, you bastard. He got dangerously close to her. Yes, I'm a bastard, but I can't bear to let you go. He Huan lay down in an unbearable posture. Her delicate face was buried in the pillow. She didn't want to cry, but her tears still fell down. She sniffled and didn't want to talk to him. Qin Mo also lay down and stared at her little face. I'll let you go when you've thought it through. It's not comfortable to hang like this for the whole night. He Huan was also very stubborn. She didn't say a word and ignored him. Qin Mo was lying flat on his back. Although he had done it a few times and his body was a little tired, he couldn't fall asleep. Of course, he wouldn't sleep because He Huan was still tied up. After about half an hour, he said with a blank expression, Have you thought it through? If you don't run, I'll let you go. He Huan was still stubborn and didn't say a word. She turned her head to the other side. Her slender white wrist was already a little red. Qin Mo looked at her silently and gently pinched her little chin. He Huan, don't worry about me. She closed her eyes. I don't want to talk to you now. Qin Mo, why don't you let us calm down? Why are you forcing me? Because I'm afraid that you'll run away once I let you go, just like when I studied abroad. He answered quickly. His voice was calm at first, but it was probably because he thought that she liked Rongyu that he became angry again. When a man was angry, he would become a beast. He once swore that he wouldn't hurt Huan, but at this moment, he just wanted to torture her like this. He forced her to ask who she loved in her heart, him or Rongyu. He even forced her to call him husband. If she didn't call him husband, he would torture her even more. Huan was very stubborn. She wouldn't do it no matter what. In the end, not only was she in pain, but he was also in pain. He had clearly wanted her for an entire night, but his heart felt even more empty and uncomfortable. What was worse was that Huan had a fever. The fever was quite severe. Chinamo was a little confused. Although he was a little rough, he did not hurt her. After that, he was very careful. Even when he was angry just now, he still knew his limits. Huan's fever was fierce, so President Qin, who was at a loss, called his sister again. Chun, Huan has a fever. Qin Shun, who was still sleeping, immediately rolled his eyes. Caught a cold? Brother, you didn't cover Huan with a blanket. There was no reply from the other side, so Qin Shun knew clearly. One night, what a breeding pig. He was already so old, yet he was still able to do it. Chinamo didn't say anything. Qin Shun couldn't help but roll his eyes. It shouldn't be a big problem unless your family gets violent again. Chinamo held the phone and said in a hoarse voice, I didn't. But it was also a very rough way. Qin Shun thought for a moment. Send her to the hospital first. Maybe it was caused by her emotions. Huan's body has been weak since she was young. Even Huan's body is. Brother, everyone in the family is very supportive of you wanting to be with Huan. After all, you have liked her for so many years. But you must treat her well. Girls should be spoiled. Chapter 43:37. Chinamo hung up and started to help Huan put on her clothes. When he touched her wrist, she moaned in discomfort. His gaze froze for a moment. Then he looked at the wound on her wrist, his eyes filled with pain. She must be in a lot of pain. Chinamo closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was more careful. He carried her carefully, forgetting that he was only wearing a shirt. He brought Huan to the hospital in the wee hours of early autumn. When they reached the hospital, they took her temperature. Huan was indeed running a fever, but it wasn't as serious as he had imagined. 39 degrees. Chinamo emphasized, but I think her temperature is almost 40 degrees. It's so hot. The doctor glanced at him and took Huan's temperature again, confirming that it was 39 degrees. Finally, he looked at Chinamo. Mr. Qin, why don't you take her temperature too? Maybe your hand is a little hot. Chinamo paused and took his temperature. It was indeed a fever. It was a little more serious than Huan's, 39. 5 degrees. The doctor laughed. That's what I said. He stretched out his hand to write out the bill. Both of you can take it together. You both have to work, so in 4 drip is faster. You guys are husband and wife, right? Chinamo didn't say a word. The doctor's gaze landed on Huan's wrist. The bruises reminded him that no married couple had such a heavy taste. He thought for a moment. You're alone. Chinamo was a little speechless. We're getting married very soon. The doctor nodded and lowered his head to write. As he wrote, he said, actually, women have to be treated well. Marriage is a must. Some things are exciting, but they can easily lead to accidents. Don't you think so? Chinamo rubbed his nose and didn't say a word. He felt a little fucked up. The doctor could tell that the patient's identity wasn't ordinary. The nurse said that a Mulsanne was parked outside the hospital in the middle of the night. It was a rare car in Sea City. It wasn't until the doctor finished writing the bill and asked the nurse to take them to pay the fees that he had time to browse Weibo. Then he saw the #1 trending topic and found out that one of the patients was the CEO of King Entertainment and the other was his ex-wife. The doctor smiled. Ex-husband and wife could still be so HI. How could they divorce? On the other side, Chinamo carried Huan and let her get in 4 drip. The nurses saw the news in the group chat of the doctors. They could tell that these were the male and female protagonists of the trending topic. They booked a room and stayed in the hospital until midnight. The nurses secretly took photos and uploaded them. Hence, in the middle of the night, Weibo was trending again, especially early in the morning. It wasn't easy for the ex-couple to go to the hospital. How violent was that? The reporters from C City were already waiting at the entrance of the hospital, while the reporters from B City swarmed over like sharks that smelled blood. They were all waiting for the male and female protagonists. Huan was sick and did not have the strength to struggle. She obediently accepted the 4-drip, but she also ignored Qin Mo. At this moment, she was very tired. She closed her eyes and fell asleep. She slept, but Qin Mo didn't dare to sleep. He was the more tired one, but he still supported himself and stayed by Huan's side. He really loved and hated Huan at the same time. He thought about giving up, so he said that he wanted a divorce. They were indeed divorced, but he couldn't bear to let her go. When he came back to look for her, he thought that he probably wouldn't be able to let her go in this lifetime. He thought he could do it, but in fact he couldn't. He never could. In his heart, there was an indescribable feeling, but he could only quietly stay by her side. Chapter 43:38. They were indeed divorced, but he couldn't bear to part with her. When he came back to look for her, he thought that he probably wouldn't be able to leave her in this lifetime. He thought he could do it, but he couldn't. He never could. Even though he went to America to find a doctor for AI Jia, it wasn't on purpose. It was just along the way because it was the anniversary of Qin Lu's death. He couldn't tell Huan too much because she might not believe him or understand. Just like that, Qin Mo could only fall asleep after the drip ended and the 4 was removed. But how could he fall asleep? He was half awake and half asleep, worried about Huan. Just like that, Qin Mo reached out to check Huan's temperature. After confirming that there was no problem, he went to sleep. At 8 in the morning, when Qin Mo woke up, Huan happened to wake up as well. Their eyes met, and there was an indescribable feeling in them. He said softly, "I didn't mean to hide it from you. I was just afraid that you would be unhappy." Huan didn't say anything and leaned against the pillow, thinking about something. Qin Mo placed his hand on her forehead and said softly, "Her fever is gone. Let's go back to the apartment and head back to B City in the afternoon. I'll go back myself." Huan's voice was very soft and weak. Qin Mo stared at her and said slowly, "It's not what you think. Huan, why can't you trust me?" Huan pursed her lips and decided not to talk to him anymore. He had no choice but to call the doctor to discharge her. When they went out, a bunch of reporters were already waiting outside with their cameras raised, ready to take pictures of them. Huan's face was a little pale. She walked out of the hospital with Qin Mo in his arms. The reporters' questions were very tricky and unpleasant. Qin Mo's expression was very cold. In the end, secretary, he had to arrange for security to escort them out. Sitting in the car, Qin Mo looked at Huan and said, "Have some breakfast." The car was a spacious motor home with a sumptuous breakfast. There was even a partition in the back seat, so they could eat freely. But Huan didn't want to eat it all. She curled up in a corner and looked out quietly. Qin Mo frowned and put a glass of milk in her hand. "Drink it." His voice was somewhat stern, but also somewhat commanding. Huan ignored him and continued to sit there, looking out of the window. Qin Mo was a little angry, but he suppressed his anger. "Huan, what do you want?" She finally turned her head and looked at him quietly. "I want to be alone. I want to live by myself when I return to B City." Qin Mo stared at her for a long time and finally confirmed that she was serious. He closed his eyes and said calmly, "Do you really have to fight with me over this?" "Huan, AI Jia was Qin Lu's girlfriend. Qin Lu died for me, and their child couldn't be saved either. I can't be that cruel." Huan's eyes widened slightly as she looked at him. She thought it was his decision. A woman's intuition, and AI Jia herself had said that she was interested in Qin Mo, but he still held on to her. Go to one of his past. Huan's eyes were watery, and her throat moved uncomfortably as if it was blocked by something. After a long time, she said softly, "What if I can't understand? Then I'll be cruel, right?" He didn't say anything. Sometimes, silence was cruel. Huan stared at his eyes and finally turned her head slowly. She looked out at the morning in C City, and many people were busy with their daily lives. Chapter 43:39. Qin Mo looked at her side profile and didn't say anything. His expression was unusually ugly. Secretary he sat in front, feeling a little anxious. The two of them were at loggerheads again. Actually, she didn't want to criticize President Sheen. Why couldn't he let someone else handle AIG's matter? That was probably how straight men were, only caring about their own feelings. From her point of view, AIG's motive wasn't very pure. She didn't know why President Sheen still wanted to have contact with her. Was it because AIG was good-looking? That wasn't it either. AIG was much older than Ihuan. No matter how she looked at him, he looked a little old. Secretary he wanted to say something, but felt that whatever he said might not be right. So he gave up. The car stopped at the bottom of the building. Ihuan opened the car door and got out. Sheen Mo followed behind her. When they reached the apartment, she went straight to the changing room to pack her luggage. She took her original clothes. She didn't touch any of the ones Sheen Mo bought for her. Sheen Mo stood at the door and looked at her. When Ihuan pulled up her luggage, he came over and pressed on it. He looked at her. Are you really going back to live by yourself? Ihuan pulled up her luggage and said briskly, yes. She pulled her luggage and left. Sheen Mo held her arm. There won't be anything between us. Ihuan flung his hand away and said coldly, you can promise others. With that, she turned around and left. When she left, she felt dizzy for a moment, but she quickly calmed down. She paused for a moment, but still left. Of course, she didn't go back to be city on her own. Sheen Mo wouldn't let her go back alone. But as soon as the private plane stopped, Ihuan left on her own. Her car was parked at the airport. She put her luggage in the car and drove away. Sheen Mo stood there, his face livid. He didn't look good. After a long time, Secretary he came over. President Sheen, you have a schedule later. Sheen Mo stared at her for a long time before looking away. Let's go. After she left, they really did not contact each other for a week. He was waiting for her to come back. And Ihuan's personality was like that. Sheen Mo didn't ask about her, but he could still get some information. For example, when he returned to the Sheen residence, his parents would casually mention that Ihuan had come and ask him if he was planning to go on a blind date. Mom, why would you ask that? Sheen Mo sat on the sofa and flipped through a magazine with a troubled mind. Yu Liangxiu said coldly, because you're not young anymore. It seems like you don't even have a decent female companion for your dad's birthday, let alone a wife. Sheen Mo paused for a moment and then smiled faintly. Isn't there Ihuan? Yu Liangxiu sneered. How long has it been since the two of you slept on the same bed? You have a nerve to say that. She always cared about her son. Seeing that her son had lost weight, she also felt a little distressed. She sighed and said, you can't bear to let her go, but you don't want to get her back. Ihuan is very good. If she makes up her mind to leave you for a blind date, it will be too late for you to regret it. Sheen Mo's face was still a little unfathomable. He didn't say anything, which made Yu Liangxiu so angry that she didn't want to acknowledge him as her son. How could he be so stupid as to leave his wife again and again? She sighed and said, look at you. Needless to say, Mu Yun, Chun Shan and Mu Mu are both very good, but you and Qin Lu. Speaking of which, I haven't heard from him for several years. I don't know where he went to carry out his mission. Sheen Mo narrowed his eyes slightly and clenched his fists. Chapter 4340. This was one of the reasons why he kept AI Jia under control. He didn't want his parents to know about Qin Lu's death. To a certain extent, he blamed himself, or he was even more restrained than AI Jia. However, because of this matter, he was drifting further and further away from Ihuan. Qin Lu, Ihuan was the most important person to him, but he couldn't do anything about it. Sheen Mo was in a terrible mood. That night, he went to a bar for a drink. After rejecting a few women who came up to him, he still lost the mood. He left and got into his car. He buckled his seat belt slowly and put his hands on the steering wheel slowly. He sat there quietly for a while before he took out his phone. He unlocked it and looked at Ihuan's photo. His heart was in a trance. His slender fingers caressed the photo, and he didn't say anything for a long time. After a long time, he called her phone. The ringtone rang again and again. Ihuan didn't pick up. Qin Mo's eyes darkened. He sat alone for a long time before he started the car. He drove to Ihuan's apartment when it was almost 11 o'clock. The night sky was filled with loneliness. He rolled down the window and quietly sat in the car, smoking. He had been smoking a lot recently. It seemed to have become a habit. He would smoke when he missed her. He looked up at her apartment. The lights were off, and he didn't know if she was asleep or not. However, Chin and Mo soon found out. About 10 minutes later, Hee-hwan came back. She didn't come back on her own, but was sent back by a man. He recognized the man to be a rather famous producer, and he had a rather handsome appearance. Hee-hwan got out of the car. She was wearing a black dress. It was a tight-fitting dress with strapless straps. It looked especially good on her slim body, and it gave her a sense of innocence. Although Hee-hwan was over 30, she was small and her skin was tight. Chin and Mo often felt that she was still a 20-year-old girl. As her husband and the man who could hug her, of course he had the right to speak. But now, she brought another man home. He wasn't sure if he was the only one who had the right to speak. When he got out of the car, he was naturally very intimidating. The producer looked at Chin and Mo with a subtle expression. He walked over and said, "President Chin?" Chin and Mo nodded and walked over slowly. He said magnanimously, "Send Hee-hwan back?" As he spoke, he looked at Hee-hwan with an unfathomable gaze. The producer also knew that he had misunderstood, but it wasn't really a misunderstanding. Hee-hwan was single, and he heard that she and Chin and Mo didn't get along well recently, so he had the intention to pursue her. Therefore, he asked someone to make Hee-hwan drink 2 glasses of wine at the reception today, so he had the chance to send the beauty back. He didn't expect that Chin and Mo would be here. Liang Bin, the gold medal producer, wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and smiled. "Yeah, director. He had 2 drinks, so it wasn't convenient for him to drive, so I sent him off." Chin Mo's expression was a little reserved. "Thank you, Mr. Liang. You're welcome. That's what I should do." Under the pressure of Chin and Mo, Liang Bin didn't dare to do anything else. He wanted to leave as soon as possible. He said goodbye, and Chin and Mo didn't stand on ceremony either. He watched him leave. Hee-hwan was still standing there, watching Liang Bin leave out of politeness. But as soon as the car left, she immediately turned around and walked into the hall. Chin and Mo grabbed her hand from behind, and there was a hint of danger in his eyes. "Pursuer?" Hee-hwan shook him off and turned around. "So what? Does President Chin have a problem with this?" Chapter 43-41. She didn't look like she was going to run, so he let go of her. He put his hand in his pockets and looked at her quietly. After a while, he said, "Don't forget who you are." Hee-hwan didn't say anything and looked up at him. Under the light, she was wearing a black dress and her skin was very fair. She must have not been exposed to the sun recently. He also realized that she was wearing high heels. He thought to himself, she's still a shorty in them. President Chin is also very cute, but he couldn't deny that she was very beautiful tonight. The dress was damn fitting for her. Just as he was admiring it, Hee-hwan said indifferently, "I know who I am." Her angry look pleased him. He took a step forward, and Hee-hwan couldn't help but take a step back when she saw his expression. Chin and Mo reached out and caught her easily. Hee-hwan fell into his arms, and her face was planted on his chest. She looked a little embarrassed. What was worse was that she was wearing high heels, so her foot was twisted by the impact. Hee-hwan cried out in pain, and her face scrunched up. "It hurts." Chin and Mo looked down and saw that she didn't seem to be faking it. He felt a little sorry for her, but he didn't show it on his face. "Where does it hurt?" Hee-hwan couldn't stand anymore. She frowned and said, "I twisted my foot." Chin and Mo silently looked at her feet, then bent over to pick her up. He carried her with one hand and removed her high heels with the other, then threw them away as they passed the trash can. Hee-hwan bit her lip. "It's more than 20,000 yuan." He looked down at her and snorted. "It's a waste of space if it's more expensive and it doesn't fit." Hee-hwan was a little angry. She turned her head and said, "You're talking about yourself." He carried her into the elevator and looked at her. "I'm only worth 20,000 yuan." Hee-hwan's voice was a little low. "It's only 2,000 yuan to call in Nyo Ilong outside." "You've called him before?" He sneered. "Do other men know your body better than me? Can they make you feel so comfortable?" Hee-hwan couldn't talk to him anymore. She chose to shut up. Chin Mo carried her into the apartment, put her on the sofa, and squatted down to look at her. Hee-hwan frowned and looked at her foot. There was indeed a red ring around it, and then her eyes turned red too. You're usually not very independent and powerful. Why are you crying now? Qin Mo stared at her and coldly said, It's none of your business. He Huan pursed her lips and wanted to stand up to find some ointment. Qin Mo held her down and said, Don't move your ankle. As he spoke, he looked at her. Is there a medicine box here? He Huan was indeed in pain, so he told her. Qin Mo went to get it. He came back and squatted in front of her. He was dressed in black and looked very handsome. But now that they were so close, He Huan could smell the faint scent of perfume on his body. It was indeed not her brand, so her little face tensed up. Qin didn't even raise his head as he said in a very low voice, I went to a bar to drink some wine and accidentally rubbed it. He Huan pursed her lips and didn't say anything. He looked up and said, Don't you have anything to say? No, He Huan said in a bad mood. Qin Mo chuckled softly. If you don't have anything, I'll help you apply the ointment. Then, He Huan felt a pain as if her tendons and bones were dislocated. She almost screamed, Qin Mo, be gentle. Chapter 43-42. Before she could say anything, her forehead was covered in cold sweat from the pain. He Huan instinctively wanted to pull her foot back, but Qin Mo held it tightly and didn't give her a chance to let go. He looked up at her and said in a lower voice, Bear with it. He Huan was in so much pain that her lips were almost bleeding. She tried to pull her foot back a few more times, but she still couldn't pull it away. Qin Mo looked up at her again and rubbed for a while. He Huan fell onto the sofa in pain, clenching her fists and biting them in her mouth. It hurt so much. He put her foot down and leaned forward. He placed his hands on both sides of her body and covered her with his body. He Huan opened her eyes and looked at him. Her heart was pounding unnaturally. What do you want? What do you think? Qin Mo's voice was abnormally hoarse. His fingers gently pulled down her sling, and he frowned. Will this break? He Huan knew that he was unhappy. How could he not know the type of gown? There were so many female celebrities in King Entertainment, and they wore sling that were much thinner. How could he not be worried? He had a dark mind and couldn't bear to see her dressed like this. Sure enough, Qin Mo's fingers moved more dangerously, and his voice was hoarse. You'll still expose yourself. Don't dress like this in the future. He Huan's foot didn't hurt too much under his control, but she couldn't move at all. She could only lean against the sofa and squint at the handsome man in front of her. Then she smiled and said, President Qin, I'm not your wife for a long time. His fingers gently caressed her delicate neck and finally pinched her sharp chin as he stared at her little face. To be honest, his gaze was quite terrifying. At least, He Huan had never seen him like this before. Actually, she had seen it before. It was the night of their wedding. She fell asleep in her pajamas, and he came back after drinking. He saw her curled up on the bed. He Huan would never forget that look for the rest of his life. Moreover, he had hurt her very much that night. He had no experience at all. Although he was very gentle, the look in his eyes changed when he woke up. Later, in their married life, Qin Mo was not gentle for a long time, and they were not harmonious. Until one time, when he was drunk, he trapped her under his body and tortured her for the whole night. That night, he loved her many times and said a lot. Only then did she know that he knew that she liked Romeo. After that night of gentleness, there was no more gentleness. Their relationship had always been very stiff, and they couldn't put their feelings into words until now. He Huan looked at Qin Mo and saw that his eyes were full of hope. She closed her eyes slightly and said in a low voice, We've separated. Then aren't you dressed like this to seduce me? His voice was low and husky as his slender fingers gently caressed her face. He Huan couldn't stand it. Qin Mo, you're being unreasonable. Qin Mo chuckled softly, cupped her face with both hands, and kissed her. He Huan twisted her head, but in the end, she couldn't break free because his hands were firmly holding her face, not letting her move. In the end, it was a little messy, and they finished it on the sofa. After it was over, Qin Mo lowered his head to look at He Huan, who was leaning on him. There was a touch of gentleness in his eyes. Let's reconcile, okay? Men were generally like this. Once their bodies were comfortable, they would naturally lose their temper. Yihuan could only lie on her stomach. Her feet were still in so much pain that she couldn't move, so she could only lie on her stomach. She wanted to talk about new wife number 1, hubby addicted to pampering with more like-minded people, talking about life and looking for bosom friends. Chapter 43-43. She said no in a low voice. Chinamo thought she was just throwing a tantrum. He kissed her cheek and got up to carry her. Before he went to the bedroom, he lowered his gaze and looked at the gowns scattered all over the floor. It was a little violent. For the rest of the night, it was as if they were in the past. Chinamo was very satisfied. In the latter half of the night, they hugged each other to sleep. When he woke up in the morning, he felt especially comfortable. The gloom he had over the past few days had been swept away. Yihuan's exquisite little face opened his eyes. She had become a lot paler recently. Actually, she had been very fair when she was young. It was only because she had been filming in America that she had not taken care of her skin. And now, her porcelain white skin complemented her exquisite little face. She was really beautiful. He had always liked her and had high hopes for her. As he looked at her, he felt a desire that he shouldn't have. But he also knew that he had gone overboard last night. Hence, he only kissed her lips and got out of bed to make breakfast. Yihuan's place was very good. The kitchen was well-equipped and polished, which meant that she never used the stove. Chinamo wasn't surprised because Yihuan didn't know how to cook in the first place. When he got out of bed, there were no clothes for him to change into. He put on the clothes from last night, wiped his face, and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Actually, he wanted to sleep for a while more, but he had a meeting at 9:30, so he had to leave in a while. It was already 8:30 when Chinamo finished making breakfast. He ate a little and went to the bedroom. Yihuan was still asleep. He squatted down and said in a raspy voice, "I'm going to the office first. Don't forget to eat breakfast when you wake up." Yihuan opened her eyes, looking a little dazed. His fingers gently caressed her red lips, and his voice became even more raspy. "I'm leaving." Yihuan looked at him softly. Chinamo was naturally moved. He went forward and kissed her before tidying up his clothes and leaving. That day, all the employees of King Entertainment felt that President Qin was in a good mood. The gloom from before had been swept away. Or rather, he was dissatisfied. In the morning, Qin and Mo had a meeting. In the afternoon, he wanted to call Yihuan, but he gave up after thinking about it. Instead, he read a magazine and casually flipped through it. Then, he saw a nice watch that suited Yihuan very well. He pressed the intercom. "Secretary, come in for a moment." "Secretary, he came over immediately." "President Qin, what's the matter?" Qin Mo pushed the magazine in front of her. "Order this watch for me. I want it before this afternoon." Secretary, he was a little surprised. He lowered his head to take a look. It was a high-end gem watch from a luxury brand. One watch cost more than 3 million. Money was not important. What was important was that President Qin had personally chosen it. That was the main point. Moreover, it should be the woman that President Qin spent the night with last night. Qin Mo glared at Secretary He and said impatiently, "I'm giving it to Yihuan. What are you thinking about?" Secretary He blinked again. They had reconciled, but she moved very quickly to order it. After making the payment, the shiny watch was delivered to King Entertainment in minutes. Qin Mo held the watch and looked at it for a long time before putting it down. When it was time to get off work, he called Yihuan. Her cell phone was switched off. He frowned and drove directly to her apartment. She wasn't at home. He could only wait downstairs and call anyone she could possibly contact. After calling around, he still couldn't find her. Qin Mo was a little annoyed, but he suppressed it. His intuition told him that she was purposely not meeting him. Her cell phone was switched off, and he couldn't find her anywhere. Chapter 43-44. In the end, he went to her office. The staff said that Yihuan didn't come to work today. Qin Mo frowned and left first. He was driving aimlessly. He didn't know where Yihuan was or why she didn't want to see him. He thought that they had reconciled after last night, but now that he thought about it, it was obvious that she didn't think so. Chin Mo's fingers gripped the steering wheel as he drove along the brightly lit streets. When he passed by a cafe, he saw Yuan. She was wearing a pair of black trousers and a white sweater. She looked pure and pretty. Sitting opposite her was a very young man. One look, and one could tell that he was a good-looking man. Also, he was about the same age as Yuan. Chin Mo's fingers were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were almost white. He held back his urge to go over. When Yuan looked up, she saw Chin Mo. He was sitting in the car, looking terribly gloomy. Yuan looked away and ignored him. He couldn't take it anymore. The person she was meeting was just an ordinary friend. She could be considered as a university classmate who needed her help with a small matter. A cup of coffee was nothing. He didn't think it was a big deal for him to meet AI Jia. What happened last night wouldn't change anything. It was just a physiological need. Also, she had sprained her ankle, so she couldn't escape even if she wanted to. Besides, Chin Mo's driving skills were really good, and she felt quite comfortable. Yuan had never been a pretentious person. Yuan didn't care about Chin Mo. He didn't care if he was unhappy, but she was the one who was unhappy. Their current situation was more serious than the Cold War. They were on the verge of breaking up. In fact, she hadn't decided yet. Or maybe she was too soft-hearted, but deep down, she knew that she loved him. That was why she was so worried and couldn't let go of him. Yuan returned home at 10 p.m. She drove back by herself. Downstairs, she didn't see Chin Mo's car. She heaved a sigh of relief. If he went crazy again tonight, she wouldn't be able to take it. Yuan got out of the car and walked toward the elevator. Chin Mo leaned against the elevator door, looking upset. Yuan paused and looked at him. "What can I do for you, President Chin?" Chin Mo looked at her quietly and smiled bitterly. "Yuan, I like you, but it's because I like you that you're trying your best to ruin this relationship, isn't it?" Her lips moved, but she didn't say anything for a long time. Chin Mo closed his eyes and didn't say anything. He just took out a box and put it in her hand. "This is for you. If you don't like it, throw it away." After saying that, he walked out on his own. Yuan stood behind him and looked at his back, feeling a little lonely under the light. She wanted to call out to him, but for a long time, she couldn't say a word. After a long time, Chin Mo turned around and looked at her. It was quiet. "Yuan, I've never changed. I've never liked anyone since you were young." His gaze was unfathomable, and Yuan couldn't understand what he meant. She was a little afraid, but she didn't know what she was afraid of. Finally, Chin Mo laughed self-deprecatingly. "Even if I put the world in your hands, you won't believe that I love you." Chapter 43-45. There was a hint of moisture in her eyes. She didn't know what was wrong with her. She said slowly, "If that's the case, then let's do this." She still said it and looked at him. She didn't know where she got the courage from, but she quickly walked over and stuffed the box into his hands. "This is for you." The moment the box was in his hands, her eyes became a little watery. She held it in. She turned and left. This time, Chin Mo didn't stop her. He just looked at her back, quietly. He threw the box in his hands into the trash can, but when he got into the car, he closed the door and rummaged in the trash for a while before taking it back. He looked at the box and thought about how he loved and hated Yuan. He wanted to throw it away but couldn't bear to. In the end, Chin Mo still left. This time, he didn't ask her to stay. Their relationship went back to the freezing point. They didn't contact each other for a week, and Chin Allen's birthday was coming. Yuan didn't have to attend, but Kaim and the Chin family had a deep relationship. As a junior, she had to attend. Su Chung had a lot of opinions about this. She said to her husband, "Shuheng, I heard from Yanxio that they're preparing for a blind date for Chin Mo. There will be 3 or 4 candidates for the dinner. Why did you let Yuan go? It's so worrisome." "I only agreed because I saw Chin Mo's sincerity. But look, it's only been a few months, and it's already like this." Kaim looked at his wife helplessly. "If she doesn't go, I'll think that Yuan can't let go." Su Chung was a little angry. "Actually, it's Chin Mo who can't let go. If it wasn't for him, Yuan would have found her happiness. I think that Rong Yu is a good guy too. I didn't expect him to find a third-rate celebrity." "Shuheng, You don't know how smart the girls in the entertainment industry are. She's with Ronya now, but she'll probably throw him away after using him. I've already said that if your daughter wants to be with Ronya in the future, I won't agree. Kam smiled helplessly. I don't think that will happen. Su Chung was still worried. You're always worried. Anyway, don't get involved with Chin Mo and Rongyu in the future. They're not good people. As a mother, the more she thought about it, the more her heart ached. Kam sighed and didn't say anything else. Su Chung was still worried, so she called Yi Huan over to her place on the day of the banquet. She personally checked on Yi Huan before she was satisfied. Humph, she might lose, but she didn't want to lose face. Don't make it seem like no one wants my daughter. Yi Huan was wearing a mint green moccasins. The color really made her look fresh, especially her beautiful neck and thin shoulders. She looked fresh and sexy and didn't look like a woman in her early 30s at all. Her shoulder-length hair was pulled up in a bun. This was also the first time Yi Huan had tried such a style. It was unnatural for her, but Su Chung insisted. Look at this small waist. It doesn't look like it has given birth to a child. Su Chung was very satisfied. When she walked out like this, she would definitely look good. Why would she worry about not having a man? Yi Huan was a little helpless. After a while, she smiled bitterly. Mom, it's a little too grand. It's just a birthday banquet, not a red carpet walk. What do you know? This kind of banquet is equivalent to a matchmaking party. I'm married, Yi Huan said weakly. Su Chung laughed coldly. Another divorce? Did you forget? Did you know that the Qin family found a few girls today? Su Chung was speechless. Chapter 43-46. Yi Huan was stunned and didn't come back to her senses for a long time. Then, she said bitterly, he is him and I am me. Su Chung adjusted her clothes for her and sighed. Nothing else matters. I just don't want you to feel wronged. Do you understand? Yi Huan pursed her lips and looked straight at Su Chung. She realized that her mother, who used to be like a young girl, was slowly aging. She looked down and said in a low voice, I understand. She really understood. She had always been willful and did whatever she wanted. Her parents worried about her. Yi Huan was silent for a while and said, Mom, let me go on a blind date. Yi Huan was stunned. She didn't expect Yi Huan to think that way. Actually, she didn't mean it that way. But she wouldn't reject Yi Huan's request. She and Qin Mo didn't get along well. Maybe they really didn't get along. Yi Huan went to the hotel with her parents. GM Hotel. Looking at the huge signboard, she thought of the time when she and Qin Mo were young and he brought her here for a night. She couldn't help but feel an indescribable feeling. She got in the car and stood in the night in a mint green dress, like a fairy in the night sky. What's wrong? Su Chung walked over and asked. Yi Huan shook her head and smiled. Nothing. Let's go in. Khan brought his wife and daughter in, one in each hand. The relationship between their family and the Qin family was a bit complicated. Fortunately, Qin Anlin and Yi Liangxiu attached great importance to it, so others couldn't say anything. Yi Huan's appearance was a bit stunning. Qin Mo slowly walked down the stairs and saw Yi Huan standing in the hall. There were so many people there, but Yi Huan looked very different from the others. Qin Mo was dressed in a classic black and white Western shirt. He was surrounded by a few girls from good family backgrounds. They were all very young, and their figures and appearances were all top-notch. It was certain that they would produce excellent heirs for the Qin family. Yi Huan understood at first glance. She didn't say anything and just smiled. Qin Mo's gaze became a little deep, and he also quietly looked at her for a while. Then, he talked to the girls around him. She didn't know what he said, but the girls all laughed, but they seemed to be fighting for the top position. His eyes inadvertently swept past Yi Huan, but Yi Huan had already gone to greet his parents. He left his female companions behind and walked over as well. Seeing that it was him, Yi Liangxiu smiled and said, Qin Mo is here. Your Uncle Kaim and Annie Su are here, and Yi Huan is so beautiful today. Yi Huan smiled. Where's Yi Huan? Yi Liangxiu sighed. Maybe she ate something bad at lunch. She has diarrhea, so I let her stay at home with the Annie. The air conditioning in the hotel is too strong. Yi Huan was worried, but she only nodded. That's true. She still looked outside and silently looked at the time. In fact, she knew in her heart that it wasn't that Juan had a stomachache, but this was a blind date and it was inconvenient for Juan to be there. She didn't know why she felt a little sad. She didn't want Juan to see Chin and Mo marry someone else in the future. She thought that maybe she could raise Juan. Chin and Mo didn't agree, but she would find a way to persuade him. Anyway, if he married again, there would be a woman who could give him a son. Because of Juan was a little absent-minded. When she turned around, she happened to see Chin and Mo. She was in a trance again. Chin and Mo reached out to support her, and his eyes fell on her face. After a long time, he whispered, "You don't look good." Chapter 43-47. I'm fine. Juan shook her head. She broke free from him and wanted to leave, but he grabbed her arm and said in a low voice, "Will you dance with me for the opening dance?" Juan was stunned for a moment before she smiled faintly. "It's not appropriate today. Not appropriate." Those 3 words made Chin and Mo frown again. He wanted to ask what was not appropriate, but Juan had already left. She went to the balcony and took out her phone to call the Chin mansion. She wanted to hear Juan's voice. Previously, she had told her mother that it was a blind date, but now she didn't want it anymore. She wanted Juan. If Chin and Mo were to remarry, she had to take care of Juan. The phone was picked up by the Annie on the other end of the line. The Annie was very enthusiastic and still called her young mistress. Juan didn't correct her and directly asked how Juan was. Who knew that Juan's voice would immediately come from the other end of the line? Mom. Juan had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Her voice was also hoarse. "Juan, does your stomach still hurt?" Juan shook her head. "No." Juan's eyes were a little watery. "Have you eaten?" "Yes, Annie's baby food is delicious. It's different every day. Juan is very full, and I just miss Mommy." Juan found an opportunity to act coquettishly. Juan gently licked her lips. "Then Mommy will come over to accompany you. Okay?" Juan agreed immediately. Juan put down her phone and turned around to see Su Cheng. Su Cheng's expression was indescribable. She sighed. "Juan, you're really silly." Juan was dazed for a moment before she said, "Mom, I gave birth to Juan. I didn't feel sorry for her in the past, but she was left alone at home tonight, and this is Chin Mo's blind date party. I can't accept it, and I can't dress like this to dance with others. Mom, I gave birth to Juan. I'm sorry." Her voice was choked with sobs. As she spoke, she leaned her head on Su Cheng's shoulder. Su Cheng's face was expressionless, but she gently stroked Juan's hair and whispered, "I'm your mother too. I can understand how you feel. Just don't regret it." In fact, she also felt that it was a pity that they couldn't be together even though they loved each other. Both Juan and Chin and Mo were proud, but Chin and Mo usually gave in Juan, but she couldn't figure out why. Juan apologized in a low voice and left the balcony. Half an hour later, she changed out of her luxurious clothes into jeans and a black t-shirt and drove away in a car. In the GM hotel, Chin and Mo was still alone, holding a glass of red wine in his hand. He did not see Juan. He had looked around the banquet hall on the first floor, but she was nowhere to be seen. To be honest, she was stunning and beautiful tonight. Her hair had grown longer and was tied up in a bun. It was the first time he had seen her so gentle and youthful. Almost at that moment, he wanted her very much. But now she was gone. The opening dance was waiting for him to start. Just when Chin and Mo had no choice but to choose a dance partner, the Chin residents called to say that Juan was missing. Chin Mo's whole body was stiff as he held his phone. How could it be? The housekeeper said carefully, "It's..." Young madam took Juan away. Chin and Mo heaved a sigh of relief. Then he realized that Juan had gone to the Chiu garden. Chapter 43-48. At this time, the banquet was about to begin. Chin and Mo couldn't leave, and he was going to dance. However, Chin and Mo ignored the young and beautiful girl's hand and strode out of the banquet hall. There was an uproar. Chin and Mo, the young girl, was disappointed and followed him. "What's wrong with you?" Chin and Mo turned his head and smiled faintly. "I have something important to do. Excuse me." At this time, Yuliancho also came over and looked at her son. "Mom, I'm going back to the Qin mansion, Chinamo said in a hoarse voice. Yi Lianqiu had heard that He Huan had left and went to the Qiu garden. Now that her son was in a hurry to go there, she couldn't tell who he was going to see. She sighed in her heart. These two little ones had really made Master worry to death. This time, Chinamo had done it on her own accord. She wanted to test the two little ones' minds. Thinking of this, Qinshin came over and said in a low voice, "Mom, look at him. He's lost his soul, but Yi Huan is really beautiful now. She's not worse than Aunt Sue, right?" Yi Lianqiu looked at Qinshin's black shirt and black trousers and found it hard to understand Lan Yu's taste. However, she was comforted that Qinshin was doing well. Yi Lianqiu sighed. Not bad. With that said, he looked at Qin Mu. Qinshin, look at Qin Mu. He's quite normal. Do you want to change? Oh, that's because Zhou Chongwang is nourished, Qinshin said indifferently. Yi Lianqiu couldn't help but laugh. Didn't Lan Yu nourish you? Qinshin held the red wine and smiled. I nourished him. Mom, don't you think Lan Yu is becoming more and more enchanting? Yi Lianqiu. Qinshin drank the red wine and walked over to dance with the girl on behalf of Qinamo. Although she was also a girl, the young and beautiful girl from a good family still blushed. She wanted to call Qinshin her husband. The Qinshin couple could only sigh at their daughter's behavior. Fortunately, Lan Yu didn't mind. Qinshin had more rotten peach blossoms than Lan Yu. With this dance, he would definitely come to propose marriage, and they would have to spend a lot of effort to prove that Qinshin was a woman. What a headache. Qin Anlin and his wife looked at each other. It was his birthday. Did Qinshin have to steal the limelight like this? Yi Muyun sat on the sofa with Tang Sher. Tang Sher's face was full of admiration. Mr. Yi said calmly, "It's useless to look at her. No matter how beautiful she is, she's still a woman. She can't satisfy you." His little bun was a little dissatisfied. Yi Muyun, you're getting more and more shameless. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. I heard your parents' conversation when I went downstairs once. You want to be obedient? Mr. Yi smiled faintly and looked at his little wife. Tang Sher glared at him. Yi Muyun, he smiled and continued to feed her. Then, he deliberately fed her a few glasses of wine, successfully making her slightly drunk. He liked to see his little wife act like a little girl. She was not that young anymore, but Snow looked especially young, just like a little bird. Actually, he also knew that others would think that he was a pervert, but he didn't care. He just wanted to pamper her like this. When his little wife leaned into his arms, he immediately got up and carried her. He greeted his parents. "Mom, Dad, Cher is drunk. I'll take her upstairs to rest." This rest was commendable. Chapter 43-49. The Qin family was already used to Yi Muyun's evil deeds, especially his parents. They could only sympathize with this little daughter-in-law. Tang Sher should have grown up, but she forced Yi Muyun to become a child. What a bad taste. On the other side, Qinshin finished a dance and was about to leave. The girl blushed and asked for her WeChat number. Qinshin raised his eyebrows. Then, after thinking about it, he decided to add it. Another rotten peach blossom. Of course, Lan Yu watched how his wife hooked up with other girls. Should he be proud that he managed to poach Qin Mo's woman? Qinshin came over and kissed Lan Yu's lips. Are you angry? What do you think? Lan Yu wrapped his arms around her waist and nibbled on her lips a few times. He was clearly dissatisfied. Qinshin smiled and satisfied him to his heart's content. The girl who had just added him on WeChat looked hurt and tears welled up in her eyes. He was actually G. Lan Yu looked at the girl's sad face and sighed. I've been treated as G again. But he quickly pulled himself together. How are you going to make it up to me tonight? Qinshin chuckled. What do you think? Lan Yu didn't say anything else. He chuckled and reached out to pinch her face. Actually, his Qinshin was as obedient as a cat at home, even though she was flirtatious outside. The banquet continued and wouldn't stop just because of Qin Mo's sudden departure. Qin Mo rushed back to the house. The aunt said that Yi Huan left with Yi Huan for about an hour, and they even left with a small suitcase. Qin Mo frowned. She didn't say where they were going. No, she just said that she was taking Yi Huan out to play for a few days. The aunt said carefully, Although young madam, she wanted to bring Juan. I couldn't stop her. Chin Mo nodded. It's okay. I'll go and find her. After that, he turned around and walked out. When he got in the car, he didn't rush to start the car. Instead, he smoked a cigarette first. In the faint mist of the night, Chin Mo's eyes were somewhat blurred, and his expression was so deep that it was impossible to see clearly. After a long time, he dialed Juan's number, but her phone was turned off. He frowned and dialed again, but her phone was still switched off, so he sent a WeChat message. Where are you, Juan? I'm coming. Of course, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. Juan didn't even bat an eye at him. Chin Mo held his phone in one hand and held a cigarette in the other. He slowly finished smoking and stubbed out the cigarette before starting the car. He went to Chin's apartment first, but there was no one there. He didn't need to go to his place, as there was definitely no one there. Chin Mo looked for a few places she could have gone, but he couldn't find her. In the middle of the night, he sat in the car, quietly looking at his phone, dialing again and again. Juan's phone was still switched off. Chin Mo didn't want to alarm others, so when his parents called to ask, he said that he was with Juan. However, after hanging up, he was still a little worried. After all, it was very late. Where did the two of them go with their luggage? It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the morning that Chin Mo remembered that he and Juan had bought a villa in B City after their marriage. He rarely went there, but Juan liked it very much. Later, when they divorced, he gave the villa to Juan. The car immediately started, and more than half an hour later, they arrived in front of the villa. In the dark night, the lights in the villa were on, and there was a sense of warmth. Chin Mo sat in the car and watched in silence. He seemed to have calmed down. Chapter 4350. His car slowly drove into the courtyard and stopped. He got out of the car, and the guard at the gate came over. President Chin. Chin Mo lit a cigarette and looked upstairs. How long has Juan been here? The guard answered honestly. She came here around 10 p.m. Chin Mo nodded, walked in slowly, and pressed his fingerprint to open the door. The lights on the first floor were not turned on, and it was very dark. He didn't turn it on and walked directly upstairs. When he came to the second floor, the light in the corridor on the second floor was dim and hazy, and it was very beautiful. It was also very quiet. He walked over and stopped at the door. Behind the heavy door was his wife and daughter. Of course, Juan was ignoring him now, but Juan was still his child. Chin Mo's spirit temporarily won, and he reached out to open the door. The room was full of smoke. In the traditional and gorgeous master bedroom, Juan and Juan were sleeping on the bed. On the big bronze bed, the white silk quilt slid to one side, revealing the two little girls. Juan was wearing one-piece pajamas, cute and round. She was hugging a small pillow with her four limbs, and her soft and chubby face was resting on it, and the pillow sank a lot. On the other side of the big bed, Juan was lying on her stomach, and the pillow was under her little belly. It was obvious that they had a little game before sleeping. Juan's hair was loose, and her black hair was draped over her shoulders. She was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. She was small and thin, and Chin Mo found that Juan seemed to have lost a little weight. He looked at her quietly, thinking about how she looked when she appeared in mint green, so breathtakingly beautiful, and now she was very cute. It was Juan in his youth. Chin Mo's eyes flashed with a touch of desire and tenderness. He bent over and kissed Juan, and then kissed Juan. It was a kiss. Juan had been sleeping soundly the whole time. Slowly, she felt that something was wrong. She opened her eyes and saw his Juan eyes. Startled, she immediately hugged the pillow and shrunk to the head of the bed. Late at night, he stood in front of the bronze-colored bed in formal attire. He slowly took off his jacket and threw it at the foot of the bed. Then, he carried Juan in his arms. He didn't dare to leave Juan's side, because Juan would be scared in an unfamiliar environment when she woke up. He carried her directly to the sofa. Juan was shocked and angry. She hit his shoulder. "Put me down, Chin Mo. What are you doing?" He put her on the sofa. She sat down on it, bounced a little, and stared up at him. Chin Mo reached out and gently stroked her little face. "I've been looking for you for half the night." She couldn't stand his jade-like gaze and turned her face away. He moved closer and closer, trapping her between the sofa and himself. His voice was particularly hoarse. Is there a reward for clearing the game now? Iwan bit her lip. What reward? I don't know. Chinemo smiled lightly, reached out, and carried her up. Then he put her on his lap. If she didn't know what he wanted to do before, it was clear now. She didn't know where his appetite came from. She struggled. Chinemo leaned over and said expressionlessly, "Do you want Iwan to watch our live broadcast?" She was furious, but she couldn't do anything about it. He got what he wanted. Iwan was so angry that she hit his shoulder, but this would only make Chinemo feel better. He kissed her lips carefully and said hoarsely, "You're so beautiful tonight. Where are your clothes?" Chapter 43:51. Iwan didn't need to think to know what he was thinking. She snorted and turned her face to the side. Throw it away. Chinemo didn't care. He could still buy it after throwing it away. He always wanted to hug her in at once. It was always inconvenient with Iwan around. Once was enough. Chinemo finally let her go, but he bit her shoulder reluctantly. Iwan was bitten by him, but she didn't dare to make a loud noise for fear of disturbing Iwan. Chinemo hugged her, feeling a little confused. He kissed her for a long time and said, "Shall I take you to take a bath?" Iwan didn't want to talk to him at all. He was so annoying. Chinemo was in a good mood. Although he was a little unsatisfied, he still carried her to the bathroom and served her like he served little Iwan. In the end, Iwan's face turned red and her breathing was messy. She got up, took the bathrobe, and ran away. Chinemo looked at her back and chuckled. Then he took a quick shower himself. Back in the bedroom, Iwan and Iwan were huddled together under the quilt, only revealing their fluffy little heads. He still had something to say to her, so he dragged her out of the quilt and carried her to the sofa. He wrapped her in the blanket and said, "Why did you run away tonight? Are you jealous?" Iwan was a little tired and didn't want to talk to him about this. She laid in his arms and vaguely responded with an mm. No matter what he said, she would respond with an mm. She succeeded in making Chinemo angry. He pinched her little chin and expressionlessly said, "Let's do it again." He was angry, and so was Iwan. She suddenly propped herself up, sat aside, and flipped her hair. "Do you want to quarrel?" He suppressed his voice and said, "I just want to know what you think. It's a physiological need." "That's what I think," Iwan said in a low voice. "Are you satisfied, President Chin?" Chinemo stared at her and said, "I didn't see what those women looked like." Iwan felt embarrassed and turned his face away. The appearance of those girls tonight was the biggest embarrassment to him. It didn't mean that he didn't have a choice. Her voice was very soft and somewhat bitter. "Chinemo, if you remarry, I want to take care of Iwan by myself. I don't mind not getting married." He was startled. He didn't think that her abnormal behavior tonight was because of this. After a long silence, he asked her, "Are you just worried about Iwan? What else? Do I feel sorry for you?" Iwan smiled a little miserably. "You don't need them, Chinemo. Everything you have means that you will never lack women." Chinemo sneered. "I'm happy as long as I don't lack women. Are you and Iwan not important to me?" "Iwan, I really feel like all the love I've had all these years has been fed to the dogs." "Then you can continue to feed the dogs." Iwan snorted. Chinemo ground his white teeth. "I really want to bite you to death." Iwan ignored him. She bit her lips and didn't speak for a long time. Chinemo stared at her for a while and gritted his teeth again. "How can I like such a cold-hearted woman like you?" In the end, he was unwilling to give up, so he pulled her over and kissed her fiercely. Iwan was wrapped in a small blanket and couldn't move at all. She thought that he was going to be rough with her, but he didn't. He just hugged her and said in a hoarse voice, "Let's call a night. Iwan, I also want to have a good rest." Iwan was a little surprised and looked up at him. Chinemo closed his eyes and said, "Let's sleep now. I have to go back for a meeting tomorrow." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.